Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back. This is part 6 of the OBS tutorial, and I am specifically focusing on the advanced tab. And so I'm going to try to kind of give you basic explanations on this. I had to actually go back and do a little referencing to one of the setup guides to make sure that I was actually explaining it correctly in my head. That way I didn't give you guys any misinformation. So the first thing you're going to see right here under this tab is general, and it says use multi-threaded optimizations. You're going to want to check this. Now, a lot of processors have what's called virtual cores or hyperthreading, where say if you have an i7-3770K or an AMD and processor that has 8 cores, you have 4 physical cores, and then you have 4 virtual cores. Now, if you have a 12-core processor, then you have 6 actual cores and 6 virtual cores. And what this pretty much does is it divides the workload of what you're doing into all of those cores. So it doesn't actually put it doesn't put a lot of stress on one single core. It divides it, and it makes performance a lot better. So you're definitely going to want to use this and keep this option checked. And then right down below that, you're going to see process priority class. Now, by default, this is going to be set to normal, and you're going to want to keep this to normal. OBS by itself is very CPU intensive, and it tries to balance out how much CPU usage it's taking based off of what other programs or processes you are running in the background. Now, if you set this option to anything above normal, you're going to be pretty much allocating more CPU usage or putting that process at a higher priority, meaning it's going to get more CPU usage and more CPU power before any other program, and this could cause some stuttering or any kind of lag on your end. So if you have a separate streaming PC that's dedicated just to streaming, you probably would be more than able to just set this option to above normal or even high. But a lot of us only have one single PC. It may be a $2,000 PC, and sometimes if we're fortunate enough to even have one, it may not be a $1,000 or $2,000 PC. It might be, $700. You're going to want to keep this at normal. So if you have the hardware, by all means, go ahead. If you don't, please keep this on the normal setting. Then we have the scene buffering time. As you can see, it says 200 milliseconds. Twitch didn't really give a reason as to why you want to keep this at 200 milliseconds. It just kind of didn't give any background on why the setting's there. So don't worry about it. Just kind of keep that at 200 milliseconds. Then you have disable encoding while previewing and allow other modifiers on hotkeys. Again, there wasn't really much explanation on these two specific options here. But in regards to allow other modifiers on hotkeys, this kind of means that any hotkey you make, say if you're changing between scenes, like you want an intro scene, the gaming scene, and then like an intermission scene, you can modify these hotkeys and add little, tweaks and stuff like that to them. So you want to keep that checked. Then we come down to the video aspects of the advanced tab. Now the first thing you see here is the X264 CPU preset. Now, in regards to this specific option here, if you have a bandwidth cap through your internet service provider, you're going to want to keep this at least at very fast, super fast, or ultra fast. Now, the reason being is because very fast is pretty much just like if you're comparing an AVI file format to like an H.264 or MP4 file format. You realize that the file sizes are immensely different in sizes. So very fast is going to be a smaller compression size than faster would be. Also, if you have a really kind of a mediocre PC like an i5 and you're playing Battlefield 4, if you put this on faster, you're probably going to have some bottlenecking on the CPU. And anytime you change this at all, it doesn't matter what processor you have, if you lower this setting, it is going to use more processing power. Okay, so again, you have to remember and take into consideration where your CPU power, how much usage you're using when you're playing the game just by itself, and then you have to add on top the streaming processing power, and then you have to consider how much more CPU usage am I going to use if I lower this setting. It is drastic, and I mean, with my 4790K, if I'm doing 720 at 30 frames per second, and I change this to fast, which I've never gone to medium, but I've gone to fast. OBS tells me there's high CPU usage and that I should turn it down. And so, I mean, I wouldn't go anything past 85% on your usage. You're really running the risk of just consistently stuttering on either your game or dropping frames in OBS. So, beastly computer, separate streaming computer, fine, put it on fast. All right. If you don't and you have a bandwidth cap, keep it on very fast. You're not sacrificing much of a difference in video quality. It's not that bad. So that's okay. Then you have the encoding profile. Now, this by default is also set to high. They don't really recommend main because you do have a lot of mobile devices now that have to be able to encode and be able to download the video output file format, which is the 264, okay? And some mobile devices may not be able to do so if you change this setting to main. So with everyday's technology advancing and everybody having tablets and phones, the mobile audience is kind of what's growing when it comes to Twitch. People are at work or they're running around town doing any kind of chores and they got Twitch open. So you want to keep this on high. Again, that doesn't have much of effect on your actual video quality. Keyframe interval. Goodness, English is hard today. Keyframe interval, keep that to 0. You don't have to mess with that. UCFR, you can keep that check. Now, and then right below it, you have custom X264 encoder settings. If you really know what you're doing in terms of programming, encoding, and video encoding, then you can mess with this. I would not recommend messing with it if you don't even know what it is. If you want to get creative or curious, you want to Google it or YouTube it, by all means, go ahead. Stay away from it if you don't know what you're doing. Encode in full range, don't worry about that, keep it unchecked. Allow 61 to 120 FPS entry in video settings. Twitch does not recommend that you stream any game above 60 frames per second. Keep in mind that any time that you stream at 60 frames per second, you're also using more CPU processing power. Okay, so any value that you turn up to get better frames or better looking quality, you are going to be using more bandwidth. You're going to be using more of your processing power. Now, down here you have the audio section, which is force desktop audio to use timestamps. If you have a lot of desyncing issues with your audio, you can change this. Now, I don't know if you can take this value above the 200 millisecond or negative 200 milliseconds. Again, like I said before, my audio section, when I try to make any kind of adjustments, the highest I could set that value to was minus 200. And when I did, it actually it wouldn't pick up my audio or my microphone. But if you still have really bad desyncing, which you really shouldn't have that much of a desync if you're setting everything up correctly, you can always get a third-party program, either an audio mixer which is hardware, or you can get like Adobe Audition, or if you prefer something else, by all means, get a different audio program. But that way you have more control over how you want to fine-tune your audio, and you can sit there and do quite a few tests and make sure that everything is in sync the way you'd like it to. And use mic QPC timestamps. That's the same thing. If your microphone is like 5 seconds before whatever's happening in the game, you can also use that. But I don't see a point to have timestamps. I mean, just kind of fine-tune your audio. That's my opinion. And finally, we have the network section, and you'll have the automatic low latency mode. Twitch pretty much says, hey, don't touch this unless you talk to someone through OBS or developer, and 95% of you are probably not going to ever use it or ever need it. And same thing goes for bind to interface. This what that does is it allows you to select a different network adapter and stuff like that. And then finally, you have the latency tuning factor. Again, don't touch that unless you talk to an OBS developer, and you're not going to probably need it. And same thing with disable TCP send window optimization. And that's pretty much that for the actual advanced